I actually started in Lesotho in a double capacity. I was UN resident coordinator and also UNDP resident representative. But as a result of a reform that has been undertaken by the UN since 2018, those two positions were separated. So I am only UN resident coordinator and a dedicated UNDP resident representative. Another person has been appointed. Now, what we do as resident coordinator, I have an office, and I have officials who are working on strategic planning, who are working on communication advocacy, working on monitoring and evaluation, working on partnerships, working on, we are also in the process of recruiting an economist. So there's a pool of technical people, technicians and experts to support the resident coordinator in his or her work. Now, what is that work? That work is one being the highest official, the highest UN official in the country, and therefore bringing coherence and cohesion in the work that we as United Nations do. And you know that there are many agencies, and agencies focus on different mandates based on their own comparative advantage. But the role of the resident coordinator is to bring it all together. What does that mean? It means many, many things, but let me just focus on two. One is we work on development. So we work to support the development of the country, and as you know, since 2015 up to 2030, we have the Sustainable Development Goals. So we work together to support governments to make progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. That is one. And then two, how do we do that? We follow the national priorities. Lesotho has a national development plan in place, and the second NSDP has been finalized, and it covers the years 2018-19 to 2023-24. Yeah? And we have then a cooperation framework that we call UNDAF, United Nations Development Assistance Framework. That is our framework, and that framework then is in line with the government's priorities. That's how we make our contribution. And so the resident coordinator is responsible for the implementation of the cooperation framework, making sure that whatever is being done, undertaken, projects, programs across the agencies, all come together into some of the Sustainable Development Goals, and also then bring a contribution towards the National Development Plan. So I think that is in essence what I would like to say, but there's a lot of things to say, there are a lot of details to say, because on how and where and how we work together and how we work with government. We are obviously always in contact with government, and as such the Office of the Resident Coordinator is the first point of call for whatever discussions that need to take place, etc., etc. So this is in very short what I can say. We do a lot of work in the political arena. We are, for example, supporting the national reforms. We do work in human rights. We do work on gender. We do work on a number of on HIV and AIDS, and a number of thematic issues that are undertaken by specific agencies. So that's more or less what I'd say in the few minutes that I have.
Oh, I see. Thank you very much. Of course, the primary objective is the drought report, but maybe we could, just for the interest of our readers, the reforms issue is a critical one. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could ask on that. We've seen some progress I don't know whether you would call it what do you make of it? Are we not late? These reforms were recommended by SADC in 2016. There was a timeline even to say that by May 2019 they should have implemented constitutional and security sector reforms. But obviously those timelines have been missed. And when you look at the process and where it is, do you think the government, the opposition, in fact all the stakeholders are doing enough? If not, what do you think needs to be done to accelerate the process?
Okay. Well, I think that my first answer would be straightforward. Yes, there is progress. There has been progress. Does that mean that progress was easy? No. And it was never meant that this would be an easy process. It's a political process. That is one. Then two, I think the essence of progress has been reaching consensus on what is wrong in Lesotho and how to fix it. And for that, it really took broad-based national dialogue for people to express themselves, to express their views, to express their frustrations maybe, but in the end to put a finger on what is not right in Lesotho, what is generating political instability and sometimes insecurity. So over the last almost 2 years, starting in 2017, the United Nations has been working very closely with government, and that came from a commitment from government itself that they wanted to undertake reforms based on the recommendations from SADC and based on different reports and different other consultations and meetings, etc., etc. So I think that the fact that we have come to this level today. Last week we had the 4th National Leaders Forum, and the National Leaders Forum is really a forum where you find leaders, political and otherwise, civil society, churches, etc. Because you want to make sure that what has been achieved through the different levels of the national dialogue has to be to some extent vetted by the leadership of the people. And I forgot the traditional leaders, traditional chiefs. So that was important in itself. And you're right, there was a deadline by May 2019 that constitutional and security sector reforms should be finished. But I think that it was difficult to imagine that in such a short timeline it would have been possible to achieve such a difficult task, because these are difficult areas, these are difficult processes. And so for me, I believe that it was probably not very realistic to think that they would be finished by May 2019. Does that mean that we don't need to accelerate? Certainly not. I think we need to, because this should also not take, an eternity. Because in the end, the reforms are not an end in itself. The reforms are a means to an end. The end is working on development, is generating jobs for the Basotho, is providing service, education, health to the Basotho people. It's looking after, it's actually working on sustainable development goals. But political instability is an obstacle to any sort of development, and so we actually have to work on it. So the point I'm trying to make is that while I agree that certain deadlines have not been met, I also have to acknowledge that progress has been made, and we need to work harder and faster to have the process complete in a reasonable timetable. I am not in a position to give a timetable, but there are already some indications about timetables. And so the next stage is going to be another national leaders forum, and then a second plenary that is expected to take place in November. And after that, then the actual reforms should start. That is, implementing the actual change should start. And it will be looked after by a National Reforms Authority that is being voted on in Parliament. So we are hoping that on Friday this week, when Parliament reconvenes, that authority to oversee the implementation of the reforms. So overall, I think that it is actually exciting that this progress has been made. It doesn't mean that there are no issues. There are. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't work harder and faster on this. We should, and we are. But I think that looking at it and looking at the difficulty and the complexity of the process, I think one has to acknowledge that it's already good that we have come to this level. There are more challenges to come, but they will be worked on as we proceed.
Okay. Yes, Parliament is supposed to reopen on the 18th, which is Friday, and obviously this is one of the issues that has to be dealt with, the issue of the National Reforms Authority. But there is another competing issue brought on by the infighting within the Basotho Convention. There is talk about the no confidence vote. Have you, as UN, have you tried to speak to the parties about possibly about the implications of the no confidence vote, the instability in the government on the reforms process itself?
Yes, we have, because as we deal with the different consecutive steps of the reforms process, we are working from Lesotho, so we know what is happening in Lesotho. We heard about the challenges that the main political party in the coalition government, ABC, faced. And so, as we discussed with all stakeholders, political and non-political, it is clear that for us it is important to have some immediate stability in order to build longer-term stability, if you see what I mean. And so everyone is definitely aware that the issues, and if there's more instability in the country, that will be playing against the reforms agenda. I will not speak specifically to the issues as they came up from the political parties themselves, but I think that the overall goal for us is working and facilitating a process that would keep political actors together and also keep them aware of the implications of these issues on the reforms itself. Last week, when we attended the National Leaders Forum, in my remarks, I also made it clear that this is the time when the political actors will have to come together. They will have to come to an agreement that reforms are actually in their interest, whether in government or out of government. The reforms are in their interest because they are in the interest of the country, they are in the interest of their constituencies and their voters. So I think that if I look back 2 years ago and I look at the difficulties of bringing stakeholders together, and I look at what we have covered so far, I think there has been a clear increase in the interest and on the reforms, but that interest has to translate into something tangible, some clear changes. So I think the actors are aware, but we also work consistently with them to remind them that it is important to keep the reforms process on course. And it is only normal in any democracy that those who are in government and those who are in opposition may not always agree, and in fact they tend to disagree on a number of issues. But we have seen the initial disagreements on the national dialogue come, the initial disagreement that were keeping people apart, We have seen them decrease a little bit, and actors coming together, even for those who do not always agree, and I think that is important. But at this juncture, I guess what I have to say is that they need to come closer together, because when it comes to making the actual changes, the actual reforms, that's where the crux of the matter will be, because that's when people will have to let go of this and change that, and accept to take the difficult choices that may go against their own personal and political interests.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned right from the beginning is that the UN, in terms of its work, is to spearhead development. And for any country, before you start talking about a whole lot of things, there are the fundamentals, the basics that need to be taken care of, the basic needs of people. One of those is food. And we're looking at this report. It's actually looking at the food situation in the country, food security, or the lack of it. This report was produced on the 8th of October. Can you please take us through it, just the highlights of it, the major findings, the major issues that you found about the food situation in the country?
Okay, I'll take you back to 2018 and tell you that the government has a technical arm that is called the Disaster Management Authority, and that arm is responsible for disaster preparedness and management. And the DMA therefore undertakes regular assessments as far as food security is concerned. And there is in place a Lesotho Vulnerability Assessment Committee that sits every year and that does this piece of work. And the work is basically done by sending people in different districts and different communities and looking at the situation in terms of food security. And there's a whole template and a whole tool for them to collect data. Then they come and consolidate and analyze the data. That's what is called the Lesotho Vulnerability Assessment Report. So based on a report that was published in May 2018, last year, it was established that around 300,000 Basotho would be in need of food security by the end of the year. And that was because of the late arrival of rains, and which discouraged people to plant, and even for those who planted, they didn't get anything out of that. So based on that report, we as United Nations decided to take early action, and we applied to an internal mechanism that is called the Central Emergency Relief Fund. It's an emergency fund, and so we applied and received $5.5 million to support the 300,000 Basotho already in need of food assistance at the beginning of this year. And that was this amount was planned to last 6 months, the first 6 months of 2019, this year. Now, based on that, because of the need to update the data that we were working on, there was a rapid assessment in March, and it was published in April, indicating that the numbers were actually increasing. From the 300,000, we were going above 400,000. And then the Vulnerability Assessment Committee undertook a more in-depth the annual assessment report in June, and that's where we got the current data that we have. And unfortunately, it was the findings are that at the time when it was produced, about 400 and some thousand Basotho were in need of food assistance, and those numbers were expected to rise. And when the final figures were published and updated, it said that 433,000 and 410 Basotho people are currently in need of food assistance in the rural areas, and 74,000, as you can see in the document, in the urban areas. That takes us to about 508,000 Basotho in need of food assistance between now and perhaps December. And those numbers are expected to rise as we go into the lean season and the beginning of 2020. So these are some of the numbers, but I could also perhaps speak to the fact that the most hard-hit districts were at the end of 2018 and the beginning of this year, 2019. There were the 4 districts in the south, Mafeteng, Mohale's-Hoek, Kuting and Kachasnek, and Maseru Rural, the district, also joined. And by September, sometime in September, there were 4 districts who were already in IPC3, that is an integrated food classification phase that has 5 phases. The first one is, let's say, neutral, the second is stress, phase 3 is crisis, phase 4 is emergency, and phase 5 is catastrophe, basically. That would be famine. So at the time we already had 4 districts in phase 3, and as we speak the whole country, the whole 10 districts are converting to phase 3, that is crisis, hence the food crisis. And so that is then what transpires into the note, the update that we published last week. And that note includes what we have done under the SURF for the first 6 months, implementing the $5.5 million US, but it also talks about the needs, the situation, what we are looking forward to as we go into the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. So that is the overall picture. So basically what we're saying is that as we speak, we have passed the mark of 500,000 Basotho who need food assistance now, and that is approximately 1/4